Hey everyone, welcome back to Secret Sonics. This is episode 147 with Kallie Marie. I had a great chat with Kallie, and we talked about so many things, including going to audio school in the UK, thinking of herself as a science artist, her approach to working with bands and pre-production, getting artists to do the best possible project they can afford, even if it means doing fewer songs. We talk about content versus art, synths and sound design, writing for film, doing the parts of the production process she does best and delegating the rest so that the record sounds as good as possible. She talks about not just being inspired, but to actually capture audio right, the definition of a producer or lack thereof, and why it's important to actually be able to explain to people what the thing you do is. We also talk about her forthcoming book called Conversations with Women in Music Production, the interviews. So tons of great takeaways in this episode. I really loved it. I think you will too. So here's my conversation with Kallie Marie coming up right here on Secret Sonics. Hey everyone. If you're anything like me, you often find yourself looking for business insight in podcasts. And I'm sure many of you are also into meditation and reflection to help better understand yourself. Former guest of the show, Carl Bonner, decided to launch a podcast that brings these two elements together. It's a series of guided self-reflection exercises, but specifically for freelance creatives like you and me, focusing on the struggles we face as we try to grow our businesses, while also finding more happiness in the work that we do. It's called Thanks for Thinking. It's definitely an unusual format, but if you want to grow your self-awareness, find deeper career satisfaction, and make more money, then I think this podcast might be for you. Experience it for yourself and click the link in the show notes below. You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Join us weekly for honest conversations with real-world music producers and audio professionals. Hello, and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I am your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Kallie Marie. Heralded as one of the most versatile studio talents in the business by Pro Sound News Europe, Kallie is a recording engineer and producer who has worked with artists such as Jeff Derringer, Emotion Picture, Ashley Hicklin, Royst, January Jane, Rainmakers, Makes My Blood Dance, and Mary and the Ram. She also produces and writes for her own studio project, Explosives for Her Majesty. Kallie's an award-winning composer, winning a Broadcast Production Music Award with Empath Tracks. Her work encompasses music for film, TV, dance, sonic branding, and a keen interest in creating music for video games. She has pitched for notable firms including Bigfoot Music Plus Sound and Nylon Studios. Additionally, she has written music for choreographers Warren Adams and Lonnie Landon, among others. Kallie is also a freelance writer for Sonic Scoop, a contributing author to Title on music production published by Rutledge Taylor Francis Group, and has a forthcoming book with Roman and Littlefield due out June 15th, 2022, called Conversations with Women in Music Production, the interviews. I'm pretty sure that former guest of the show, Rooks, put me in touch with Kallie, and I invited her on the air, and she's graciously agreed to join me. So with all that to say, welcome to Secret Sonics, Kallie.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. How are you doing today?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Yeah.
Amazing. So I'd love to learn a little bit about you. If you don't mind telling the audience and myself a little bit about your story, how music became a thing for you, how that evolved into music production.
Sure. So I guess music was always a thing for me because I started off as a ballet dancer. So I was always around music. And I guess from that, I also developed like a keen sense of rhythm and just an innate, visceral sense of time and rhythm and feel. But I didn't really grow up playing music. And then when I got into high school, like a lot of kids, I got really into music and got very passionate about that and started playing guitar. And I was in a couple garage bands like you do. And then one day, one of my friends in high school said, you know, the local community college has like these recording classes. You could be like, learn how to record your own stuff. And this is like in the late 90s, you know, so it was still like analog. Nobody was running around with laptops and stuff yet. And I was just like, oh, why would I do that? You know? And she was just like, well, because nobody can control how you sound. And I was like, oh, like a light bulb went on. And so we took all the classes together initially. I took some night classes in like basics of electronics and learning how to solder and make circuits. And then I took a studio maintenance and repair class. And I just like got my feet wet and found that I really loved it. And after I finished at the community college, I moved to England and I did my bachelor's and my master's in music production at the Leeds College of Music. So once I finished that, then I moved back to the States and have just been running amok ever since.
Okay. Well, how'd you end up in England to get your degree?
So we had some exchange students at the community college who are all English, and they were just visiting for a semester. And I was taking a public speaking class that semester after they left. And the assignment was like, we're given a list of English cities. And I knew that all my friends had recently relocated to Leeds, and they were all musicians, and had bands. And so I said, I have to, do this project on Leeds. What can you guys tell me about it? And they're like, oh, well, it's a college town. It's got lots of live music. It's a great music city. And then they're like, I can't remember who, but one of them put a bug in my ear and they were like, you should really check out the university. It's really meant to have a great program. In the United States, university costs so much more than it does in the United Kingdom.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And I also have dyscalculia. And so I was struggling to get through my math requirements, which, as you know, in the United States, you have to reach a certain level of competency and algebra and all these things before you can have a bachelor's degree, no matter what it's in. You must do the math. And I couldn't. So I kind of looked at that and I thought, there's a way around a few of my problems if I just go over there where the math is not part of the degree. And I realized that, hey, bachelor's degrees are 3 years instead of 4 years, and master's degrees are like a year instead of another 4 years.
Right. You don't have to become a total academic, right? You could get something utilitarian out of it.
Well, I mean, I definitely got a very good academic training there, but it just fiscally made more sense than the American system, because I knew I was going to be deeply immersed in only my subject and not running around taking like 50 other subjects. It's just a more specialized way of dealing with higher education. So so that's how I ended up over there.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I was just talking with my wife about this, about how weird it is that like I grew up in New York, right? And it's just like expected that you're going to go to college. And it's like you go to college because you have to go to college, and it's not because you want to do something. It's like people should go get a degree if they want to do something with that degree. Like go study biology if you want to become, I don't know, work in a lab, or if you want to work in biology. Like go study those things if you want to do something with it. Like, it's crazy that you go study a degree just because.
Right. I do think it makes people well-rounded, but yeah, there's something to be said. If you know exactly what you want to do, then being highly specialized is...
Yeah, I mean, I'm in Israel, and that's pretty much how they do it here with, you could become a lawyer by just getting a 3-year program, right? Then you have to do like an internship and stuff, but you don't have to do the whole 4 years of a degree and then going to law school and then being, 6 figures in debt.
Exactly.
In debt or whatever. So tell me a bit about, I guess your history working with, bands and the good old US of A.
Yeah.
You come back, and what happens next?
I came back during the financial collapse of 2007, which was not a wonderful time to be trying to get your feet wet in New York. But I was really lucky. I hit the ground running, and I got an internship at Skyline Studios. So I started there at the same time as working for Apple. So I just worked 7 days a week for like the first 9 months of life there, which as a New Yorker, is that can be pretty intense. So, and then through Skyline Studios, I met Jeff Derringer, and I started working on that record. And I met another artist, Natalie Michelle. And so those were some of my early artists that I worked with. And then for a minute, I worked really hard on getting the second Explosives for Her Majesty record done. And, you just meet people as you go really quickly. And after the Explosives for Her Majesty record was done, at that point, I was teaching audio at a couple different colleges and universities around New York. And I worked with a motion picture after that, and we recorded at a great studio called Russell Street in Greenpoint. And we went to Bunker Studios for Explosives for Her Majesty's record, just for the drum tracking. Everything else we tracked ourselves.
Did you work in Flux Studios? Because there's like a great picture of you in Flux Studios on your website.
Yeah, no, I did not work in Flux Studios, but they were gracious to let me have photos done there for the Pro Sound News piece that came out in 2018. So they're Flux Studios are
Amazing.
lovely people and wonderful studios. So definitely
Yeah.
grateful to them for that.
I definitely learned a bunch from some of Fab's YouTube videos, like early
Yeah,
on,
yeah.
maybe like a decade ago or something.
Yeah, his videos
But
are
yeah.
great.
So if we jump forward towards, today,
Uh-huh.
so you're working on this, you worked on this book, which is coming out shortly.
hmm
It seems like you're working on like film music. What exactly are you up to these days?
Yeah. So these days I write library music for Empath, which is a women-owned music library. And I'm in the middle of getting a bunch of music done for them. And we've had a couple of placements last year or this past year in some TV shows. One for the Travel Channel. I think it was like Paranormal Caught on Tape or something like that. And then I also freelance as just a straightforward film composer. So if anybody's looking for music for their movies, their TV shows, games, I'm always up for that. I'd love to do music for a video game or a film, anything really. And so I've been working on that, and I signed a deal with Accidental Entertainment. So they are a sync placement for a lot of wonderful artists. And I'm currently working on a new track with one of their artists. So I'm trying to get some vocals finished for that. I don't sing, but they have some singers. Yeah, I have that track cooking, and hopefully that'll be done maybe by the end of the summer. I'm optimistic. I've been trying to get it done all during the pandemic, so it's just been hard to get into the studio. And then, of course, the book keeps me plenty busy, or has done the last year or so. And I have two artists right now that I'm in talks with, but I'm not going to spill the beans on who yet. But I'm really hopeful that maybe by the end of the year we can start doing some work if they're keen to get going. So lots of
Amazing. Yeah.
irons in the fire.
Yeah, totally. The pandemic totally also threw, I think, so many of us off for a loop of like just like getting in and doing work. I finally feel like I just had COVID like a month ago, and I'm finally feeling like pulling out. Yeah, you know what? Honestly, I'm kind of happy I had it, to be honest. After 3 vaccines and like just avoiding it for so long, it was like less stressful to have it than it was avoiding it for so long.
Yeah, I get that.
And thankfully I had a mild case. So but yeah, but I feel like I'm emerging from that like cocoon of like, oh, there are people here, like just went to like my friend's show. It felt like so liberating.
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of people are going through that right now, for sure.
Hopefully it sticks around long term and we don't have to worry about another variant, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. Wait, so I'd love to talk a little bit about, like, I know we can't go too deep into the details of the book because it's forthcoming, but I read a little bit of it and it was really interesting. I'd love to hear about what made you kind of decide to write this book and, what's it about, I guess, broadly speaking.
Sure. So I guess back in 2017, I did that initial chapter for the Producing Music book with Routledge Taylor Francis, and I was a contributing author for that. So the initial research actually came from that chapter. I was asked to contribute a chapter, and I was at first investigating a couple different topics, and the editors felt that this would be the right direction for me. So I spent probably 3 months, maybe 6 months, developing categories of questions that I wanted to ask, as many women producers, engineers as I could, ask these as many people as I could. And of course, that was difficult because I was working the whole time I was doing this. So it wasn't like I could just, dedicate
solely focus on writing a book.
Yeah. Well, just conducting the research, even because a lot of the interviews were like an hour and a half a piece. So as you know, like that, you have to block out the time. And then once all the interviews were done, I had to transcribe them. And I'd never done a lot of interview transcribing. This is sort of besides our question, but interview transcribing takes ages.
Wow.
So anyway,
I could only imagine.
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time devising the questions, and I initially had my own theories based off of some of my own experiences, but I just thought, well, my experiences, when I would share them with other people, they would usually say like, oh, well, that's just crazy. That didn't happen. Or, that's wild. Why would someone say that? Oh, just ignore them. And so it was always kind of like really dismissive responses. And I was like, no, but it's kind of a problem sometimes. And it's, I don't know, like I feel like there's something else there sometimes. And you take a lot of things with a grain of salt, but at some point you start to kind of question yourself, like whether you're really experiencing what you think you're